saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the view of Wolfpack Research or any of its officers. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on this program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. We are not investment advisors. We hold no registrations with the SEC, FINRA, or any other regulatory agency, and none of the opinions expressed on this podcast should be considered investment advice. The listener should assume that we have positions in and stand to benefit from any stock or other security mentioned on this podcast. Do your own research before making investment decisions.
Welcome to the Wolf Den, everybody. This is Dan David coming back at you with the pack on the I Hung Up on Warren Buffett podcast. Today we have Sound Carl still with us.
That's right. Survivor. Standing stronger than John Fetterman.
Big show today. Big show. Somebody that we really wanted to have on our show for a very long time. We should all pay a lot of attention to. Experience in taxes and economics like we have never heard on our show. Arthur B. LAFFER, Art LAFFER, an economic acumen and influence in triggering the wide world of tax-cutting movement in the 1980s, earned him the distinction in many publications as the father of supply-side economics. The LAFFER curve, though he does not claim that he came up with it, he has made it the LAFFER curve, or people have made it that way for him. Is one of the main theoretical constructs of supply-side economics, illustrating the trade-off between tax rates and actual tax revenues. Dr. LAFFER was a member of President Reagan's Economic Policy Advisory Board for both of his terms in 1981 and 1989. He was a member of the Executive Committee of the Reagan-Bush Finance Committee in 1984 and was a founding member of the Reagan Executive Advisory Committee for the Principal Race in 1980. He also advised Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady.
Iron Lady, that's right.
On fiscal policy in the UK during the 1980s. Dr. LAFFER received a BA in economics from Yale University in 1963 and an MBA and a PhD in economics from Stanford. Dr. LAFFER currently lives in Nashville, where he is the founder and chairman of LAFFER Associates, an institutional economic research and consulting firm. That's one I would hire if I needed tax consulting. Dr. LAFFER, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. I love the Wolfpack idea. It's just cool.
Well, you know what? On some days, it just is.
But not as cool as Voodoo Economics. Your favorite president
Voodoo
tagged Dr. LAFFER as a proprietor of Voodoo Economics.
Okay, it is true that Bush Sr. was my favorite president.
Oh.
I thought he got a bad deal overall. I really did. I thought he was a very smart, qualified man with no charisma. And his son had all the charisma and wasn't, not so smart.
Oh, dude, I'm in a tough crowd today. Oh, my God. It's starting off heavy right away.
If you'd have put them together, they'd have been a pretty damn good one. But yeah, I guess that was during the primary, right? Where, the Voodoo Economics. And tell me, did he jump right on board after?
Well, he didn't understand it. Do you know what voodoo is?
Yeah.
Oh, I have a notion.
Well, I'll tell you. It's the past pluperfect of VD.
That's awesome.
I'd have loved to have been in the room when you told him that.
I had a big sign in my office at USC, home of Voodoo Economics.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, it turns out that some of that voodoo is the stuff that we do that works. And you came up with this. You didn't come up with the concept, but you delivered the concept in such a way that people could understand it. It's a great story. A lot of generations don't know it. There are a couple famous people a part of this story, and as so much work is done in Washington on the back of a cocktail napkin. Can you tell us a little bit about that day?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I can tell you about that day specifically. I'm old. I drool. I forget a lot. So, and by the way, if you ever tell a joke, have you ever told a joke that really goes over well?
Yeah, well, once.
Everyone roars and laughs. And what do? Then you tell it all the time.
Right, gotcha.
So once you develop a curve like that I did, it came from my classes where I was basically mathematics. And what I did is I used these little parables, these little vignettes, et cetera, to explain the math of what it is in the real world. And one of those was the Laffer curve. If you tax at 100%, you won't get any revenues because no one will work. If you tax at 0%, you won't get any revenues because, well, you don't collect any taxes on what they do earn. So, I did that, and I did that with a bunch of people. And so I went around all the people who weren't economists doing that little curve all the time. So I can't really assure you that I remember that evening specifically above all others.
I do. I do, and I recorded it for posterity.
Yeah, well, that's what Don Rumsfeld said he did, and that's what Dick Cheney said he did. But there were 3 or 4 others who claimed to have been there too, who, whatever it is. But it was a fun night. Don Rumsfeld was one of my dearest friends, and Dick Cheney was a classmate of mine at Yale, one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet. I just think he's wonderful.
Yeah.
And what I was trying to explain to them at the time was that their tax surcharge, which was called Whip Inflation Now, the win buttons, which the tax surcharge that they wouldn't collect the 5% additional revenue. They may collect 4, they may collect 3, but they won't collect 5 because people will shelter their income, people will reduce the amount of income they earn, and there will be a response on the tax base. So that's all the curve does, is illustrates that. And I guess they all really liked it. And
Well,
it became famous.
I think they did. And I have your book here, your latest book, Taxes Have Consequences. Boy, do they. And you're very nice enough to inscribe it. I'm not a lawyer, I think before I speak, and that's right over the Laffer curve illustration, which I think is fantastic. I mean, when I'm done with it, I'm going to give it to my father. He's going to absolutely love that. And this is kind of the.
I use that line every now and then. And, the people on the line don't hear it quite. So it takes about a quarter of a second delay, which is really fun. You hear them, I'm not a lawyer. I think before I speak. And they go, and they catch it. It's I love doing those type of zingers.
Oh, we go after lawyers. They come after me constantly. I had 3 or 4 cease and desist last year, which are fun. I file them.
Oh, my
They're
God.
great. Yeah, sometimes I have them made into toilet paper and send them back to the people. It's a great fun for me. But yeah, I mean, lawyers are great.
I don't want to get on your bad side today. No. I don't want a roll of toilet paper showing up here at my office now.
Oh, you would love it. You would love it. So this meeting happened, and things started to roll from there. I guess Rumsfeld and Cheney were buddies back then. I'm sure they read your book and decided they could bomb somebody. That was their second favorite thing to do. But it did really drag us out once we started to get into a position where we had Congress and we had control away from Carter and the Democrats of a terrible economic position that we were in the late 70s. Do you see any parallels between then and now?
I think we're in 1978 right now.
Yeah.
We're coming into the midterm elections just like we did in 78. The world looked really dark and grim back then. It really did. I went back and had been looking at some of my papers and some of my speeches and stuff back then, and I was extraordinarily depressed about the future of the country. We were in a secular decline. Jimmy Carter was about as bad as it gets. That's true until we got to Joe Biden. And, and it's very much the same thing now. You can't guarantee that the same consequences will occur that occurred then. But I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, to be honest with you. And then we had the Steiger-Hansen bill passed in 1978, which cut the capital gains tax rate quite substantially. Then we got some other stuff happened. Jimmy Carter did his national energy plan and all that, and the economy was terrible. And then the skies opened. The sun shone forth on the earth.
Oh, here comes Reagan.
The animals multiplied, the trees blossomed and bore fruit, the children danced, and Ronnie Reagan was nominated. And then he was elected. And then the future came that was just so spectacular all the way through Clinton. As you probably know, I voted for Clinton twice. I thought he was a great president.
Yep.
And, and it's not Republican, it's not Democrat. Kennedy did it in the 60s, did this huge, the go-go 60s with tax cuts and pro-growth policies. Harding and Coolidge did it in the 20s. Jerry Brown, I did his flat tax when he ran against Clinton in 1992. So, it's not a Republican Democrat thing. It's really just good economics. Just, have you ever heard of an economy being taxed into prosperity? I missed that in Econ 1. I've never heard, I tried to tell Joe Biden this, but I don't think he got it. But I've never heard of a poor person spending himself into wealth.
No.
It just makes no sense at all. And yet macroeconomics should be just as common sense as everything else. It's not mystical. It's not magical. Things don't pop out that never existed before. People don't work to pay taxes. They work to get what they can after tax. It's that very personal and very private incentive that motivates them. And, when you pop it up too high, you destroy initiative output and you cause people to spend their times figuring out tax shelters rather than working, and all of that stuff. And this book illustrates all of that stuff historically, and you can see it through all the ages, all the different things they did. It's really a fun read. Some of it you'll giggle and chuckle. Chapter 2 describes the historical litany of all the major tax shelters. We go through 20 of them at different times, different places.
Only 20 of them, and there are a lot more.
There are thousands more. No, there are 20 really, really big ones that have begun right in the beginning of time. And, there Mrs. Dodge having all of her wealth in state and local bonds, which you didn't even have to report.
Right, because it wasn't federally taxed.
Never. Not taxed. Not only not taxed, it wasn't reported back then. You didn't even have to report it. And, this is an estate that was huge.
Right.
And it on it goes.
And why did she do that? Because the highest federal tax rate was 91%.
Well, you're pretty high.
Yeah.
It was even higher back then when she was around. But yeah, it's true. And that's what happens.
Well, I mean, yeah, the book is great. Like I said, I just got the book, so I'm going through it, but I'm looking at it. And I thought what was great is the way you started chapter 1 is just the history of taxes. I mean, it occurs to me, as you talk about 78 being kind of like where we are now, a lot of comparisons, there's not much we haven't done. We've tried it all and we know what works.
But we don't learn from it.
No.
The problem is we don't. Very seriously with you for a second, everyone's allowed to have his or her own opinion. You really are. This is America after all, and you're allowed to have your own, but you're not allowed to have your own facts.
Yeah.
And, when your ideas don't comport with the facts, you got to change your ideas. You can't pretend and change the facts. Without data, anything is possible. This book lays out the data. And I've specifically wanted to focus on the top 1% of income earners and the highest tax rate, because that's where the political debate goes. All the 1%ers, the Sayas, the Pickettys, the Elizabeth Warrens, the Bernie Sanders, the ALG, let's tax the rich. What happened when we tax the rich? We know what happened when we tax the rich, and they don't know straight up from sick'em. Whenever we raise the top tax rate, seriously, look at these numbers. Whenever we raise the top tax rate, the economy underperformed. Whenever we lowered the top tax rate, it outperformed. There it is in black and white. Also, whenever we raised the top tax rate, rich people earned less. They did. But what they did earn, they sheltered.
Yeah.
And the economy tanked and poor people got hammered. The 1930s, when we raised rates up to 90%, 94% in the 40s, poor people got killed. So that we also know. The other thing we know is whenever you raise tax rates on the rich, tax revenues from the rich went down. Every time you lowered tax rates on the rich, tax revenues from the rich went up. Duh, those are the numbers. Now you tell me how I can listen to a Bernie Sanders speech and not puke. Or watch Elizabeth Warren say her so. I mean, it's just, you've got to ground yourself in facts. There is no reason the facts are this way, but they are. And you've got to live within those facts.
This is the wrong show to defend Bernie Sanders.
I'm not trying to defend anyone.
No, I know you're not, but I'm not going to defend them either.
Okay. I mean, but the point of it is this is just, it's fact-based. And if they raise the tax rates on the rich, believe me when I tell you, the revenues from the rich will go down. The economy will underperform, which is exactly what's happening.
Well, part of it also is, they say, what's the oldest lie on Wall Street? This time it'll be different.
Yeah.
One of the oldest lies in Washington, gosh, there's so many, is that they're going to close tax loopholes. And they don't, and they're not going to. And this is in your book. What I did read is not just the muni bond incidents with the heiress of Dodge, where she didn't pay federal income tax and didn't even have to report it. there were chairmen and CEOs running companies back then and saying, hey, why don't you pay me a few bucks in salary and the rest is going to be in stock options and stocks, and I'm going to only pay capital gains.
Oh, and the restaurants down there, they paid them in kind. They did all that stuff. They have beautiful offices, art collections. I mean, it's amazingly all the different dodges they've fought to get around taxes. It's just and let me just tell you, when you see a group of people hanging around with Joe Biden or Obama or whatever, don't think these are street people trying to explain to them what it's like being poor. No, these are people from Goldman Sachs who are shifting back and forth into and out of government, legislating a new tax shelter. They then go back to Goldman Sachs and sell it to the other people. There's a strong incentive for developing ways of keeping your own money. And that's what they do.
I was talking to David Skokel last week, obviously a very intelligent, very successful man. He kind of talks about the fact that, look, we've been through this before and we can get to greener pastures just when it looks dark, which was a nice uplifting message that I appreciate. But also, he's been in rooms and I've been in rooms where you have these people that are talking about getting to ESG, whatever that means, whatever you define it as, because it's not really defined. And they don't care if you're paying $30 for a cheeseburger. They think that's a great thing. As long as, you get to clean energy tomorrow or you get to some kind of political ends for the party tomorrow. And we both make the observation when you look across the table, every one of those people are rich. They can absolutely afford a $30 hamburger. They don't care. They don't care. They just want that soundbite. Not everybody's going to be able to afford it. And I'm tired of being pandered to by them. I really am.
Well, you look at the air today. I mean, I shouldn't be admitting this to you, but I was born in Youngstown, Ohio.
Flint,
I was
Michigan.
raised in Cleveland.
We won't hold it against you.
Well, the story was when I was a kid that if Christ had come back to the earth and had made the error of landing in Cleveland, Ohio, to prove that, in fact, he were the Christ, he wouldn't have to walk on the water. Hell, anyone could walk on the water. He'd have to sink in it. And today, if you look at Cleveland and you look at Lake Erie, it's clean. The air in LA is no longer 3-stage smog alerts. We made enormous progress on the environment. The black-footed ferrets back, the bald eagles back. I mean, we have made huge progress in the environment and what's going on. I am very much an environmentalist, but not when it costs a lot to get nothing.
Well, when there's no number one, there's no real plan, and we do still have problems. Listen, I mean, Lake Erie may look great, but the Flint River still looks like shit. And that bothers me. My family still lives
in Michigan.
Hey, pal.
Yeah, Michigan looks like that. I mean, come on, let's just be serious. Ohio's cool, but Michigan.
We sit above you, just so you know. We sit right above you, and we will settle this in 4 weeks. Right?
Oh, we got the game, huh?
Yeah. We will settle it. We will see. But look, there's no real plan that energy companies can hold on to and say, this is what we're going to have to do over the next 10 years. We can't dance for our money tomorrow, and then it's just a whole different tune the next day. No.
But let me, if I can, come to you with a little different way, if I may.
Yeah.
And I've worked a lot. One of my dear friends here is Al Gore. If you look at his book, The Future, I was one of 3 blurbs on it. I think he's an extraordinary intellect. And there may be something to this hydrocarbon.
We hope so.
But the way you solve it is not doing mandates. The way you solve it is not doing all this stuff top down. What you should do is do a carbon tax and take the proceeds from the carbon tax and reduce the income tax, dollar for dollar. So you have it that people tilt away from carbon-based things naturally on their own accord without being told to do it. It's because price is reflected. And by lowering the income tax rates, you will create the prosperity that would have been destroyed by the carbon tax. And you'll have a very good way of cleaning the environment along their lines and responding to it now without killing the economy. Now, I took that to, I think, 20 Democratic senators. Some of them I know really, really well. Not one of them would be willing to buy into it. They want to keep the proceeds. The real truth is they are after higher taxes, not not carbon, tilting away from carbon. And Al Gore, exact opposite, by the way. He has proposed this from day one, that we should do a carbon tax and then reduce pro rata, a dollar for dollar income taxes or payroll taxes, which I am a big fan of his, and I think that would be a great thing to do. But you can't get a Democrat to go along with it.
Well, I mean, you can't. Look, Clinton or Gore's conservative fiscal policy and outlook back in the 90s, they couldn't get past a primary for dog catcher in the Democratic Party today.
No, they couldn't even debate Fetterman.
Well, Fetterman can't debate Fetterman.
And by the way, you got to be careful with dogs when you're a wolf pack.
That's true.
You got to,
Dr.
Yeah,
LAFFER,
that's fair enough.
Why is it always the stick with the government and policy? Like, why isn't it incentives, say, to a manufacturing facility to put carbon scrubbers on their facility, and they're incentivized to do that rather than saying, we're going to stick it to you with taxes, right? Because the whole point is to not pay taxes. Well,
what you want to do is allow the genius of the business community to solve the problem correctly in the most efficient way to get the results you want. And doing that, government agencies are not the innovators, are not the creators of new technologies that make things work. So that's why I love putting on a carbon tax and let the businesses solve how they do it. They may put on scrubbers, they may not. They may find alternative. There are just all sorts of ways that I don't even understand. When I look at businesses today, I'm just amazed at what they do. I'm just awestruck. How can you make all those hamburgers like that and so good? Look at McDonald's, look at Tesla, look at all let them have the incentives and then let them run.
That seems like what our country was founded on, right? It
does to me too. Rich people are wonderful. Yeah. The problem in this country is poverty. And what you want to do is not make the rich poor. You want to make the poor rich. And, you build up. I've never, Phil Graham says it. I love the way he says it. I never got offered a job by a poor person. And, these guys who have made America the greatest place on earth are the top 1%. They're the people who've done the innovation score. That's what distinguishes us from every other country in the world. In Ethiopia today, there are street cleaners all over the place. They're not the ones who pushed the prosperity. It's the tippy top, the guys who did the innovations, the guys who developed the product, the guys who made us all really rich. And that's the wonderful thing about America. You too can get your wealth in heaven by developing a great product that everyone wants and it's good for the country. And that's what I think we've lost with Biden. He talks about doesn't like trickle down. He wants to fatten out or whatever he said, blow out or come up. What is it? He has a phrase on it. No. The top ones are the ones that drive the show. And if you go after the top 1%, you're going to destroy America's growth. That's what this book shows. Taxes have consequences. Read it, look at it, see the facts. Our facts are that the U.S. has really prospered because of the innovations of the top 1%.
And I guess I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it because it's such in the zeitgeist. I guess you're not a big fan of a flat tax on billionaires of 1 or 2%.
No, I want a flat tax on everyone.
I'll use Steve Forbes thing.
Well, it's even better. It's all of it. It's what I did with Jerry Brown when he ran for president. We got rid of all taxes.
Democrat, by the way.
Yeah.
Jerry Brown, he's a wonderful guy, by the way. We got rid of all federal taxes, the income tax, the corporate tax, the capital gains tax, the death tax, the unearned income tax, all payroll taxes, both employer and employee. We got rid of the Medicare, Medicaid tax, excise taxes, got rid of all taxes with the exception of sin taxes. And the reason we kept sin taxes is their purpose is not so much to raise revenues as it is to change behavior. Speeding tickets. I jokingly say we Americans don't like drunk people smoking while they shoot each other.
No.
Alcohol, tobacco, and fire, But you just, and that the sin tax are a very small sliver of all taxes. And we replaced all federal taxes with 2 flat rate taxes. One on business net sales. That's if you're a Republican. If you're a Democrat, it's a value added tax. And a personal unadjusted gross income tax with no deductions, no exemptions, no exclusions, 1 or 2 in there, but all those 2. If you did that with just 2 taxes, at 12%, you would match all federal tax revenues without any Laffer curve effect. None of that. It would be static revenue neutral. Can you imagine what this country would look like? It'd all be collected by businesses. So if the company owes you $100, they send you $88 and they send $12 in. and when you buy something, it's got a 12% tax on the VAT. Bang. Can you imagine? We went from ninth in the race in 1992 to second in the race. We had that blue-eyed character from Hope, Arkansas, the one who sucked his lower lip all the time, Billy Clinton. We had him on the ropes. We were coming into New York and into California in the primary. We were just had defeated him in Connecticut and in Oregon, okay? And we were coming, and we were closing in on Clinton. We had that. Oh, we had him. He was just shaking and quivering like an old. Our phrase was, "What's got you flopping on the dock?" He was just sitting there. And then Jerry Brown announces 3 weeks before the primary in New York that he's going to name Jesse Jackson as his running mate. We didn't win because of that, but we did have the second most number of votes, delegates, in the Democratic primary with a complete flat tax. Complete flat tax. How's that? That's cool. That's what we need.
Well, the way you describe the complete flat tax makes no sense. We'd have nothing to argue about. So,
Why are you so reasonable?
You don't go to church, do you?
I don't, but my wife goes every Sunday. She goes to mass. And
does she have stuff to argue about there?
No, she just takes my money with her.
Okay, good. Well, I just want your money too. I'm trying to provide something like church, and you just send me your money.
Some of the arguments on flat tax and I'm a fan of it. Let me just, in all candor, obviously, I'm not rich, but I'm rich adjacent. So, poor still disproportionately pay because you have other taxes like gas tax, you have
payroll
sales
taxes,
tax.
Yes.
These things would disproportionately affect them. And that's the big argument. Would you agree?
Well, the big argument here is that it's about proportional to what they pay now. The payroll tax today is what? 14%. That's just federal.
Yeah.
You got federal taxes on other stuff like gas taxes. Now, a lot of those are state and local as well. You've got other things. You've got tariffs that come in on products from abroad, and if you look at it, the tax is pretty evenly distributed. Maybe the two groups that face the highest marginal tax rates are the poor and the very rich. The poor face high marginal tax rates because every time they earn anything more, they lose their welfare benefits. So it's called a poverty trap. I did a little thing on, let me just describe it to you, and I think your viewers might find it entertaining. If you take a single mother, this is law today in Philadelphia, single mother, if she earns $29,000, what I did was I calculated all the taxes she'd have to pay in that $29,000 and get her after-tax take-home pay, okay? I then took all the social welfare benefits that she was eligible for at that level of income, which is a lot, and I added up the economic value of all those social welfare benefits and added those two together. So this is her total spending power today at $29,000 income. You follow me?
Yeah.
Now, if she shows gumption, initiative, really goes get them, and she increases her income to $58,000. I did the same calculation. I took all of her after-tax income, got all what she got in her income. I then looked at the social welfare benefits she would get, which are much less than they were before, and the number came out exactly the same as it was at $29,000. She faces a 100% marginal tax rate today in Philadelphia. This is the way it is today. That's a very high tax. You wonder why people don't get out of the poverty trap. With a low rate, broad-based flat tax, you're going to create jobs, output, employment, and production so they earn more. That's why I wrote enterprise zones in the early 1970s. If you've got a problem in the inner city, where don't give them welfare, for God's sakes, make it a tax-free zone. If you make it, anyone who lives in the enterprise zone and who goes to work in a company in the enterprise zone, no payroll tax, neither employer or employee. No income tax up to $50,000 a year income. You have to get rid of all the regulations, restrictions, and requirements that are anti-growth. No minimum wage, so they can get on-the-job training. And you could create the prosperity overnight with no cap. In other words, it's not a trap, though. Once you get rich, then they come and slam you. No, that's what we should be doing. But these guys just don't want to hear it. That's why I did that with Jack Kemp and Ronald Reagan. I describe it sort of humorously here, two white guys. one who wished he were black, Jack Kemp, and one who never met one, Ronald Reagan. Just joking. Just joking. But the truth of the matter is, they bought into it. But I couldn't get the Democrats to do it at the time, even though they thought it was good. They just didn't want to get into it. But we've got to get rid of this welfare trap in the inner cities. Otherwise, they'll be held down forever and ever and ever. You go and pretend you're living in the inner city, and it's tragic what the government is doing to you. They make you welfare dependent. Yeah. And once you try to break that welfare dependency, they nail the hell out of you and force you back down. And look at what happened in Ferguson. I mean, if you were a kid in Ferguson, that guy, Michael Brown, it's such a tragedy that here he is 6'4", he's 18 years old, no future. I mean, he's angry. He doesn't have a chance in this world. Grabs that stuff out of there. Then he goes and meets another guy who doesn't have much of a chance, the cop, two instruments of the socialist state coming out in the street and shooting each other. You know, it's just so tragic what the left-wing policies have done to make the poor much worse. And then they always sell it on, oh, I'm trying to be kind to the people who don't have. No, you're not. You're enslaving them. That's what they're doing. And it's tragic.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, anytime that, you know, any of the lower disenfranchised or the poor, as you'd call them, want to complain about Democrats, the Democrats remind them we're the one writing the check.
Well, that's right. That's the enslavement. And when you're there in that day, you don't look past tomorrow. When you're hungry, think of it. I don't know if you guys have kids or not, but let me just say, what would you do is if the government pays you to leave your wife and kids, and they'll give your kids and wife more money if you leave?
I'm gone.
Well, yeah, you'll leave. I don't like the way you smiled on that one. But you know what? A guy who loves his family, of course he's going to do what he can to make his family better off. And they made the incentive to leave your wife and kids so they're raised in a single mother home. That's not the way to make America great.
Yeah, no, your point is well taken. Like, when we talk about single father homes, and I think this is across racial lines because, in part of the lower income neighborhoods I grew up in Flint. So, yeah, we had no money. You grew up
in Flint?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, no wonder you sort of took a, No, you realize you just exposed the vulnerability to me.
I'm talking about a gift of growing up in Flint.
Yeah, you've been drinking too much of that water. Let me tell you guys.
Listen, that's a sore subject. It's a sore subject. That's a real
neurons.
Thing. But I will tell you that, single father homes there, whether you're in a white family or a Hispanic family or whatever, it's a very difficult situation. It does matter.
It doesn't matter. It's just terrible for humans.
Yeah.
And, without a father around, it's just, I love my dad so much.
Yeah.
I got so much from my dad.
Me too.
God, and these kids don't get it. And you can tell a mile away when they come in not having had a father.
Yeah. Well, when you're trying to be a man from the age of 6 years old, it stumps you because
it does. And they don't know how to act like a man. They don't know how to be. It's so sad and it's so unnecessary.
But our economic policy, yes, to your point, will incentivize someone. Like I know people today, they're like, I'm not getting married. My kids are, getting health benefits from the state. And if I do get married, then...
That's right. I rest my case. That's right. Yeah, it's aid for dependent children is what there. I could go through tons and tons of...
And you want them to have it. Who's anti-aid for dependent children?
Except when you realize what happens.
Well, it just starts way before that, I think, is what you're saying and what I'm saying. It's, that's the end result that, they need aid, right? But it started way before that.
Yeah. And if you had a low rate, broad-based flat tax and enterprise zones, they wouldn't need it.
No.
That's the whole thing. And when you finally got them crippled enough that they're sitting there crying, then you have to give it to them. And then you're heartless if you don't. And the whole system feeds on itself. It's this vicious cycle spiraling down. It's I don't know what your audience is like, but it's the Wumpf bird. Do you remember the Wumpf bird?
The Mumford? That was a Detroit high school.
Wumpf.
No.
Bird.
No.
Bird. It's a bird that flies in ever decreasing concentric circles until all of a sudden, whoop, it flies up its own butt.
Really?
That's what these policies are doing. They feed on themselves. They create the very need for welfare that they're supposed to alleviate. And that is the real tragedy of these programs. And then these guys get up there and pontificate on some speechify on some podium at some Flint Fair or something like that. They're up there. Oh, I want to help the poor and the. That's just all disgusting what they do.
Well, they don't come to Flint anymore at all. they skip it. So that's how bad we are.
My son-in-law just won the primary and is going to win the general election in the state Senate in Michigan.
Really?
And and District 17, that's near Hillsdale and all that area. If you know that, southern Michigan along there, right along the Indiana border.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit. It's about half the state.
West side or east side?
Yeah, it's west.
Yeah. So so it's under Kalamazoo and Battle Creek. Yeah, gotcha.
But it's down a little lower. It's right along the border there. So he's really cool. It's a 65% Trump district, so we think he's going to win the election pretty nicely. But he's way cool. Special Forces, Green Beret.
Well, good. Maybe he can help us with that border wall on Ohio.
Well, Schumbeckler. Do you remember Schumbeckler? Remember?
Oh, come on! I went to his football camps.
You know where he was from?
Yeah, I know.
Are you going to tell me he wasn't from Ohio?
I do know that he evolved. Yes.
Yeah. And do you remember Woody Hayes? His comment?
Oh my God! I remember his last act was to punch somebody out on the sideline for intercepting a ball.
He did do that. The one he was asked once is, "What happens if you were in Michigan and your car ran out of gas?"
You push it.
I'd get around and push it back to Ohio before I'd fill it up.
You know what?
This is fun.
Yeah. Hey, listen, what do you say to an Ohio State grad on your porch? Nothing. You pay him for the pizza and he leaves. That's how it's done. All right. So moving on from how much better Michigan is. Where we're at now, we got to talk about where we're at now, Art. I mean, because there's still green pastures to be had, right? I mean, there's war on the horizon.
Nuclear war.
Any kind of war, but certainly a war in Europe's got to make everybody a little nervous. If you're not, you're just not reading books.
Why are we there?
Look, that's part of it. Let's have it. Why are we there? NATO.
There are a lot of places on Earth that have injustices being done.
Right.
Are we going to put troops everywhere?
Well, we're in over 100 countries, so the answer is yes.
Well, I think we may have some problems in this. I mean, I was so glad we got out of Afghanistan. I didn't like the way we got out, but that was a shit show. Going on long. Oh, it really was. And then we just immediately dump ourselves into a war and land war in Europe. I mean, it's crazy. We've got all of these things. Let me go through the 5 pillars of prosperity for you, if I can.
Give it.
All right. Number 1, and I'm going to describe to you the ideal, the North Star. And then we're going to compare today with what the North Star is. With taxes, all taxes are bad, but some are worse than others. What you want to do is collect your tax revenues in the least damaging fashion, which is a low rate, broad-based, flat tax. So you provide people the least incentives to evade, avoid, or otherwise not report taxable income, and broad-based, so you have the least place they can stick their income and avoid. So pillar number 1, the North Star is a low rate, broad-based, flat tax. Spending restraint. Now, government is good. We need government. We need roads. We need schools. We need a judicial system. We need military. We need all that stuff. But that's what we need. Anything larger than that is too much. Anything smaller than that's too little. So we need spending restraint. Pillar number 1, a low rate, broad-based, flat tax. Pillar number 2, spending restraint. Number 3, money. We need a sound dollar. We need stable prices. So we have low rate, broad-based, flat tax, spending restraint, sound money. We don't have sound money. Number 4, we need regulations. We do. We need them badly. You can't drive one day on the right-hand side of the road and the next day on the left. But we need low rate, broad-based, flat tax, spending restraints, sound money, and minimal regulations. You don't want those regulations to go beyond the specific purpose at hand and do a lot of collateral damage. You follow me? Lastly, we need free trade. There are some things we produce better than foreigners, and some things foreigners produce better than we do. We would be foolish in the extreme, and so would they, if we didn't sell them those things we make better than they do. In exchange for those things they make better than we do. It's called the gains from trade, comparative advantage, David Ricardo. And all 5 of these pillars, we're going in the wrong direction. The guys added 87,000 new IRS agents, $80 billion. They want to raise taxes on everything that walks, crawls, swims, flies. Wrong direction. Spending restraint. Hello. There's no spending restraint in this country at all. $4 trillion from this Yahoo who did it there. Our debt to GDP has gone from 82% to 125% in the last 4 years.
$30 trillion.
Yeah. Then number 3, sound money. Hello? Well, have you looked at inflation lately? These guys at the Fed don't know straight up from sick'em. They don't understand it. There's not a Paul Volcker in there. There's not an Alan Greenspan in there. There's not a McChesney Martin. Number 5, regulations. That's all these guys do is regulate everything. Oil ones, we close it, blah, 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 blah. And then lastly, free trade. They're denying all. We should be trading with China and Russia, not nuclear weapons. I agree with that. But when you trade with someone and they pay you for what you produce and stuff, you tend to like them. You tend to work with them. So all 5 pillars of prosperity, these guys are on the wrong side of all of them. What we've got to do is take over, and we're going to win maybe the House and the Senate, maybe not. I think we probably will, but we'll at least win the House. But then we've got 2 years of hell coming. I mean, we got old Looney Tunes up there doing his stuff, and we got enough Democrats in there to be really and then we've got 24. That's where we have the chance. And what I think happens there, hopefully, is we will have someone come up that will be very clear on the 5 pillars of prosperity. You get the low rate, broad-based, flat tax, spending restraints, sound money, minimal regulations, free trade. Then get the hell out of the way and let markets solve the problem. You're much better at solving problems for yourself than I am. I know, well, maybe not you.
No, not me.
Not most people. You're from Flint. I forgot that.
Yeah, there you go.
But I'm from Youngstown.
Yeah.
When someone from Youngstown meets someone from Flint, it's ecstasy.
Really?
I mean, you can't find a place worse than Youngstown.
I found that to be the case.
But do you follow
Carl's
me?
pick is
DeSantis 24, absolutely.
that's Carl's
But
pick.
all these guys, let me just tell you, be very careful on getting too involved in one person.
Oh God, isn't that true?
But because they change. Reagan, before he ran for governor, he was head of the AFTRA and SAG, a union leader. He was a very belligerent, militaristic union leader. He caused a nationwide strike. Who would believe it? When he was governor, he raised the highest income tax rate in the state from 9.2 to 11.2, raised the capital gains tax rate from 9.2 to 11.2, raised the corporate tax, was the biggest social spender of any governor in California's history up until then. He chaired the Equal Rights Amendment, chaired it, didn't just support it, chaired it. He eliminated all the anti-abortion statutes in the state of California. Who could guess that man would become the greatest president we've ever had?
Ronnie Reagan.
Remember, people learn and they change. So don't just judge them by what they did.
Yeah.
Sit there and look at what they will do, not what they have done. And that's all I beg you.
I think you mean in modern times. I mean, there was a Lincoln in there and a Washington and a few others that were all right too. I
knew Lincoln just at the very end of
just
his
at the end. Right.
I didn't know him that
you
well.
You opened the door to his carriage on the way to the opera or the...
Yeah, George Washington was
theater.
about 5 classes ahead of me at prep school, so...
Yeah, things do change and people do evolve. You could make the point about Reagan that he was always the same person. He just had evolved into different principles of fiscal responsibility. But he was a tough guy to the end.
Yeah.
Well, I worked with him very much from the very beginning. The reason I did was my godfather was his best friend. Oh. So I was very much in the social circles with them. And if you read Colacello's book, you can see my role as this little fly all the way through all the social sets. And it was really fun but Reagan was a very nice man, a very good man, never got angry, never yelled at people.
But he was firm and determined. He changed his mind. He was a big taxer as governor, and he was a big tax cutter as president. Reagan was all sorts of different things but he learned. I used to tease him. I used to say, when you were governor, Mr. President, and he said, yes, I know, Art. I wasn't any good as a governor, but at least I learned from my mistakes. And, the truth is, when you look at these guys. Pretty good impression.
Yeah, Jack Kennedy. Here was this loser of a dilettante who didn't even show up for votes and all that. A great, great president. What I'm begging you to, and I beg your people, make sure you look at what the person's going to be. Not so much what he has been.
It's tough.
Now, DeSantis, I am a big fan of DeSantis. I'm a big fan of Cruz's. I'm a big fan of Rick Scott's. I'm a big fan of Tim Scott's. I think all these candidates, Chris Christie, they've all got what it takes. But now what you want to do is look at them in terms, and I'm a huge fan of Trump's, just so you know.
Yeah, I read that.
You look at what they got. and sit there and say, which one will do it best in this circumstance. And I think we're going to come up with a magical thing in 2024. I think we're going to find a Reagan and we're going to have the greatest prosperity because it took Jimmy Carter to create Ronald Reagan.
Right.
And it did.
Yeah.
And if it did take Jimmy Carter to create Ronald Reagan, you can't imagine the great president who's going to follow Joe Biden.
Yeah. I was in the corporate world for a lot of years. And, you get promotion.
Is that why you have the coat and tie on and all that dressed up
hey,
so
man,
fancy?
You want somebody wants me to wear a suit these days, they're going to have to pay me. And nobody pays me. I pay myself.
That's why you're not in the corporate world anymore. I mean, just like that in Flint, Michigan.
I went in a different direction. But when you get promoted, the last thing you want to do is take over for a superstar that's getting promoted themselves. You come in and get promoted for somebody who just did an awful job. And there's a bunch of low-hanging fruit you can pick up for that first year or two.
Yeah, there's an old phrase on this. He who succeeds a fool can't lose.
Right.
He who succeeds a genius is a loser to begin with.
Yeah. You don't want that job.
No, you don't.
But
don't
we're
follow
not.
Ronald Reagan. I don't care who you are, but you love George Bush. I know you did.
I think he got a bad rap. Listen, I think he got a bad rap.
He
Yeah.
did a bad job following Reagan. That's all.
Well,
He promised me personally he wasn't going to raise taxes, and I saw him.
He promised us all. He told us to read his lips.
Read my lips.
And you know what I did? I tried to read his lips, and he met me as the #1 delegate from California on that convention. And he said, read my lips. No, I tried to read his damn lips, but his nose was growing so fast I couldn't see his lips.
We did have this little thing called a war to pay for. When we stopped paying for our wars,
you got to read that book. You got to read Tax Lab Consequences. Please.
I'm going to.
We got to have a war. Well, raising tax rates on the rich does not raise revenues. Think about that. No,
I didn't say on the rich.
You can't pay for a war with high taxes on the rich. End of discussion.
We could stop going to war for small reasons.
Let's do that, but George Herbert Walker Bush got us into war.
Yeah, and he left us in Saudi Arabia too, a base there, which caused, more and more problems for the last 30 years. So I do disagree with some of the things that he did do.
Oh no! Now don't start backtracking on me. Don't be a crayfish now today.
Hey,
I want the crawdad on your way back.
Listen, he's not a world-class philanderer like Clinton, but he was.
You know that for a fact.
Well, actually, he did make some pretty offhand jokes, didn't he?
Oh yeah. Well, let's just stop right there. I don't want to push him.
He wasn't the head of the CIA. I think he would keep it quiet.
I like Barbara Bush enormously. I was very proud when Bush put her picture on a $1 bill.
My God. She does look like him.
She does.
In the 84 convention, my room was right below at the Lowe's Anatole. My room was right below theirs on the South Tower.
Yeah.
All right. There. And I was coming down and, well, you can see my personality already in this thing.
So,
and I was in the elevator with Barbara and I said, Mrs. Bush, what was that going on? I'm right down here this floor. And what was all that commotion and racket? She said, oh, Arthur, now you stop that. She was just a wonderful lady. And,
by all accounts.
But he was not a wonderful president. And he was a great vice president. I endorsed him and I supported him in 88. Okay, I campaigned for him in New Hampshire. I tried to undo all the damage we did to him in 1980. Yeah. And I did that with Sununu and all of that. And I did the front page editorial on the Manchester Union Leader with Mrs. Loeb and all that stuff. But he did not keep his promise.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of them don't keep their promise. You say one thing about Trump, but like the guy, I think he kept a list with him and he just like, I promise this. And he did keep most of his promises. Whether he was telling the truth all the time or not, apparently promises meant something to him, but I don't remember Clinton keeping all of his promises or Bush Jr. keeping all of his promises.
Look at promises are there. There are some promises you're supposed to keep and some you don't. Not some you don't keep, but there's some that are much less important. Oh, come on, I'll meet you there tomorrow at 3:00. All right. Well, something came up and I couldn't come. I called you and told you. That's not a breaking a promise. Read my lips, no new taxes. 75,000 times he said that. That was a promise. Every campaign trail.
They killed him.
That was a serious promise.
That and Perot killed him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, Perot was created by him.
This is a chicken.
There you go. And, but also the war in the Middle East is just not what we want. Reagan,
No.
Yes, peace through strength. I could tell you the stories about Reagan with Gorbachev and the conversations they had. You wouldn't believe, how cool the guy was. And look, at Reagan made some mistakes. He was older and stuff, but all of the substantive stuff. And he had the best advisor in the world in George Shultz. George Shultz was the Rock of Gibraltar. George had hired me 4 times, and he never learned not to hire me, but God was he great with Reagan.
Were you there when Reagan realized that Russia's economy was no bigger than California? For that epiphany that he had, or shortly after?
Well, I saw Reagan a great deal. In fact, I never took a job from a president after being in the Nixon White House. I was George Shultz's right-hand person back then, so in 1970 to 72. But then I made a vow I'd never take money from a politician, because once you do, you lose all your independence. You're then an employee. And, these people today, and I'll just say this, but these people today in Washington, all of his economists and everything, they will rebut arguments they know to be true in order to curry favors with their political benefactors.
The hell you say?
And that's what they do. You look at Janet Yellen, she doesn't agree with that $4 trillion in spending. You look at these guys and, it's just crap, but they have no choice. They're employees. So when you look at this and Reagan, I didn't work for Reagan. I didn't take a paycheck from him. I was able to see him all the time, spend time with him. And I think I won almost all the battles against his staff. But the point of it is that Reagan really tried to do the right thing all the time. Yes, he did make mistakes. When he put on tariffs on Japanese steel exports to the U.S., that wasn't a good move. He put on anti-dumping provisions, and, there were a bunch of things like that. But on balance, this guy just was great, and Bush just wasn't. Yeah. And Clinton was great, and he never kept the promise. Thank God. Clinton broke every promise and acted reasonably. I thought you'd think about that for a second.
Well, look, you're a very deregulation guy and a globalist almost at any cost, right? So.
No, not at any cost.
Oh, good.
No, I think Michigan, look at the auto industry in Michigan. They lost all their auto industry to Tennessee.
I was there.
I'm here.
Yeah.
All the auto companies are in Tennessee. They're not in
just Tennessee. Anymore. They lost them to Canada and Mexico first, and then.
No. Tennessee. We've got them all.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know what our income tax rate is?
Listen, you got an old refurbished Saturn plant.
It works.
There you go.
It works. And we have no income tax. We're the 3rd lowest property taxes in the nation. We have no gift tax, no estate tax, no unearned income tax. And we are the single lowest tax state in the nation. You wonder why we're the fastest growing state in the nation.
You better stop talking about this, or people from California are going to move there.
Yeah.
I did.
And they're bringing their politics with them.
I did. I brought my politics with me, too. We went from a solid blue state when I moved here. 6 out of the 8 congressional seats were all Democrat. The supermajority is Democrat in the House and the Senate here, a Democratic governor. Now there's not a Democrat in Tennessee. We've got 7 out of 8 seats are now Republican. We've got supermajorities Republican in the House and the Senate, and our governor's Republican. We haven't seen a Democrat for.
Well, you're just floating there. You're so happy to talk about it.
We're looking for a Democrat. I thought I saw one.
Well, listen, that's the kind of state to be in. And it's one of the things I don't love about Pennsylvania. And people have to admit, people are flocking to Texas and Florida.
Tennessee.
And Tennessee. These are states that are growing. We lost a congressional seat this round in Pennsylvania. I think Michigan did too.
We should have won one. We didn't, but we'll get it next time. But we'll get 2 next time. But we are the only state that attracts AGI from Florida.
Talk to me about where we are now with the debt and $30 trillion.
I'm not going to hit on the debt so much. Let me do one thing before I vanish into the darkness.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about one economic concept that I think you and your readers it's easy to understand, and it's so important. It's called the redistribution theorem. And it's a math theorem. Let me just describe it to you verbally. Redistribution occurs when you take from someone who has a little bit more,
right,
and you give to someone who has a little bit less. You with me?
I'm with you.
All right. That's all the government spending, all the COVID and all that 4 trillion is all redistribution. That's all it is. Now, when you take from someone who has a little bit more, you reduce that person's incentives to produce, and that person will produce a little bit less. When you give to someone who has a little bit less, you provide that person with an alternative source of income other than working, and that person too will produce a little bit less. This is math. It's not left wing, it's not right wing, it's not liberal, it's not conservative, it's not Republican or Democrat. Whenever you redistribute income, you always reduce total income, period. And that is exactly what we've done with these trillions and trillions of dollars, your deficit, your debt to GDP, all of that. And we are in a secular decline in this country that is virtually unstoppable unless we change politics. And it's math. It's nothing that. It's these Democrats or Republicans at universities in the East. They know they're saying BS all the time to you. They're just shoveling it all. Whenever you redistribute income, if you tax people who work and pay people who don't work. Do I need to say the next sentence to you?
No. But you do need to explain to me how there's a Republican professor in the East, or at Stanford.
I'm thinking of a Rockefeller, Bush type of Republican.
I see. Because
you know it's Bush. I put that for you.
I assumed you were talking about Senior's father, Prescott.
Prescott from Connecticut.
Yeah.
I was also, by the way, Bush is a five generation Yaley. I'm a 4 generation Yaley. And when he came in, and it was really funny when he joined us after we beat him in the primary in 80, he said, and I called you, oh my God. And I said, don't worry, you're just fine here. You attacked the only Yaley, the only Eastern establishment person in all of us in the Reagan camp. And you go after me. And we had a good giggle on that, but he wasn't.
You guys just gave yourself some kind of secret handshake and rubbed each other's hair and walked away.
I was in a different secret society. He was in Skull and Bones.
Skull and Bones, yeah.
I was in a different secret, but...
Well, now you're part of the Wolf Pack, which is way better than all of it.
That's right.
This is fantastic. People want to know where we're going to be next year and the year after, because there's...
Badly. Don't count on anything good. That you cannot undo what's been done. And all of that legislation, the Build Back Better baby, passed. All this stuff has happened. Now, maybe some of the Ways and Means Committee can stop the funding for some of this stuff. What I have suggested to the Republicans in the House is, as soon as they get in, the first thing they do is they make a bill to repeal the 87,000 new IRS agents and the $80 billion. Just that. And make sure everyone just votes on that so we can see where everyone stands, see if he vetoes it. And just pick these special things out because the key election is 2024. Now, we have a huge advantage in the Senate in 2024, and we have a huge advantage in the presidency in 2024 as well. We really do. We need to win that one to really bring us back to the prosperity. But between now and there, it's what they call August in Minnesota. It's a period of rough sledding.
Really?
And that is going to be true for the next 2 years. Don't expect miracles. It ain't going to happen. Now, what we hope we can do is stop them from doing additional damage. That I think we can do. But don't think we can reverse those policies, because we can't. And then by the time we get to 2024, 2025, you're going to have some period of time for legislation to be put into place and all of that, just like we did with Reagan. Remember, it's 1978 today, and the boom started on January 1st, 1983. So we have a period of time here, which it's important for your readers to understand. Political process is not quick, but it's very, very boom, 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 boom. And I believe we're going to have the greatest prosperity in history in the future, but it's a ways out. You
don't think China overtakes us?
No.
Okay.
No, I was the first American to go to China in modern times. I went in 1970, October, with George Shultz and John Ehrlichman in Air Force Two.
It's changed.
Yeah, it is changing very badly to being socialist. Used to be free market capital. But in the beginning days, it was pure raw supply side economics. They cut, I think it was 93% of of all production went through state-run enterprises in 1970. Now it's down to 8%, 9%, but now it's going back up. They pegged the yuan to the U.S. dollar in 1994. They outsourced monetary policy to Alan Greenspan. Inflation was going like this, and then it was on, boom, stopped, just bang. They opened up their borders to have free trade. And they grew, I think it was 33-fold in real GDP per adult during a period when we grew a little less than threefold. But now they have all of a sudden gotten Western European policies putting in place. You saw what Xi did to his predecessor the other day.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Walked him right out.
But this is not cool stuff.
No.
And they are destroying the very prosperity they created through supply side economics. In the 50-year period from 1970 to 2020, they were the miracle nation of Earth. They reduced poverty on this planet more than the entire history of humanity has reduced poverty. And now they're reversing all those policies. They're raising taxes. They're doing stimulus spending. They're becoming Joe Biden. And that means their future is going to be. Do you remember the défi américain in the 1980s, Japan?
Yeah, of course.
Have you ever heard of Japan again?
Look, Japan was an island and still is an island and mineral poor. And there's a lot of resources in China, like rare earths that they're taking advantage of.
And economic system that does it, believe me. It's not your resources. Japan did it beautifully when they cut the tax rates coming back out. And then they all of a sudden, after Obuchi died with a stroke in office, after that happened, they got Mori coming in and all these things. And they did all the stimulus spending. They're now the only country with debt levels greater than ours. And they've destroyed the entire prosperity of their country.
Stagflation for 10, 15 years.
Yeah, no, well, there's not inflation. There's a stag. They've had deflation, but they've done that, and China's just embarking on those policies too. And I feel very sorry for the Chinese, but don't worry, we're going to be in fine shape in 2030.
Oh,
and let me just say that I want us all to consider as best we can China as a friend, not an enemy. I want to do business with them. You become very good friends when they pay you and you pay them. And if they have a lot of investments in the U.S., they don't want to bomb us. They don't want to bomb their own investment. So global economy of free market, free trade economy is really good for Americans and Chinese, and they will learn from us as they have so many things.
Undoubtedly, the people of China are our friends.
They really are,
and they are today. The government of China is certainly not my friend. They've made that very clear.
It's a belligerent person group, but it is. But you can't defeat the government of China by defeating the people of China.
We sure are trying, Art.
We're trying like mad to be the goat. I mean,
we're taking down one company at a time. We've gotten 15 delisted, something like that, 12, 15.
There you go. Oh, that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah, well, they're not happy.
No, neither are we. Do you see our economy, how we're doing? Oh, congratulations on that one.
Well, it's fraud.
But it's not Chinese fraud. It's fraud of American companies with American companies. Stealing intellectual property is not unique of China. It happens all the time in the U.S. It happens all the time in China. And it happens between China and the U.S. and happens between U.S. and China. Intellectual property stealing is not an ethnic thing. It's something that should be illegal and stopped.
Correct.
Everywhere, not just, we're going to get you, China. No. And all I beg you to do is think of it that if we trade with them and we get to know them, and it'll be work out very much to our benefit, not to our detriment. Trade is not a good weapon for politics, and it works really against you, Guy. So you
didn't like the tariffs that Trump put in place?
I do like Trump's policies in trade because I think he was the real free trader of all the planet. All he did with all of these policies, the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement was great. The one we did with South Korea, the one we did with Japan. Trump tried to get policies where we eliminated all tariffs and all quotas and all restrictions on trade at the G7 meeting in Ottawa. Before he went to meet Kim Jong-un, he offered the other members there. I said, look, I've got to leave early. I've got to go to Singapore to meet with Kim Jong-un, which is really important for the peace of the world. But I've got a deal for you six. I will agree today to get rid of all tariffs and all non-tariff barriers if you guys will agree to do it too. And there was dead silence. They all looked at their shoes, up at the stars and stuff. Trump was a free trader. He's an international business leader. He understands free trade. He was using the policies there, the tariffs, et cetera, to get them to come to the table to negotiate honest free trade agreements with America. And that was Donald Trump, period. And that I can tell you, he was not the tariff man. He understood how to negotiate, and he understood that he can't give his backup position because he's a negotiator, and he was well on his way to doing it. The next 4 years of Trump would have been the greatest period of free trade in the world. But,
yeah, look, the carrot and the stick has got to be used at times. And I wasn't one that criticized necessarily the tariffs on China because they were always something he wanted to take away and have. You got me confused with Toomey. That's, he's the guy that had a big problem with the tariffs.
A lot of people, a lot of Republicans had big problems with the tariffs, and I have problems with those Republicans. They, the free trade has been the greatest thing. NAFTA was wonderful. I mean, Bill Clinton did it. I mean, pushed NAFTA through Congress, all with Republican support. But he did that. You got to just take your hat off to Bill Clinton. I mean, he just was amazing as a president. And you got to go back and look at Jack Kennedy. The Kennedy round tariff negotiation was wonderful, created great prosperity. I mean, you got to go back and just sit there. And Donald Trump was going in the second term, would have been the greatest free trader you've ever seen. And phenomenal on economics. And he understood the benefits of free trade.
Well, I'll tell you who I believe understands it's you. And you are just like one of the most lively guests I've had in years, and very animated and thorough about your subject. Write another book so we can have you back.
Yeah.
I mean, because
it's my 22nd.
And get it to me rather than 2 days before, so I'll read the whole thing.
I just wrote it. God, I couldn't have given it to you a week before because it wasn't written.
Listen, Art, this is all on you. This is Ohio people. They just are always late.
Got it. You pick on me through ignorance.
Yeah. Well, what else do I have?
In Youngstown, did I tell you about Youngstown when I was a kid? The mayor of Youngstown said that the Mahoning River is for jobs, not for fishes. Yeah. He also said he was very famous for saying, I don't trust air I can't see.
Yeah. Oh.
And he used to say every breath of air in Youngstown's 4 calories.
Best thing come out of Youngstown besides you was Ed O'Neill.
Now the last thing, you want the last one? He went down there, he saw a blue jay downtown Youngstown. The mayor did it back then, and this is in the 40s. Back there, he saw this blue jay downtown. Look at that blue jay. And the other guy said, hell, that's not a blue jay. That's a cardinal holding its breath. Yeah.
Well,
I'm having fun with
I'll
you
just
guys.
tell you, in Flint, it's just like, we'd be like, our water sucks. There's no jobs here. General Motors is leaving. But eventually somebody would lift us up by saying, at least we're not in Youngstown.
Hey, guys, it's been fun.
Where can we follow you, Art? Where can people...
I don't do follow. Let me just show you this. Can you see this?
Your flip phone?
Oh my God!
Yeah, I have a flip phone. I don't have an email address.
He's got a Star Trek communicator.
I don't have a computer. I'm not from yesterday. I'm from the day before yesterday.
Oh, that's awesome.
But you can do it. We have it here at LAFFER Associates here in Nashville, Tennessee. We have a website for the LAFFER Center. You can buy the book, which is Taxes Have Consequences. By the way, it's doing really well in sales.
I bet it is.
Trump tweeted it out the other day. I mean, I do like that man a lot. He's a very nice man in person. I just like him very, very much.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have fun with him. Yeah. No. Listen. I mean, I personally haven't had the bare ass towel snapping in the locker room session with Trump, and I haven't either. Okay, so I don't know him that well.
But all I can tell you is he's a CEO. He's a boss. And that's why I'd never take a paycheck from those guys. I worked in the Nixon White House, and I made a vow never to take a penny from a politician, because then you're beholden to them.
Well, I will say this, Art, and I truly mean this. I really hope, whether Democrat or Republican, that more of our politicians enlist you, not just because you're a great guy to talk to and very, very funny, but because like everything you say adds up. When you're talking about economics, things adding up kind of matter.
Yeah. If you tax rich people and give the money to poor people, you're going to have lots and lots of poor people and no rich people.
Well, we're always going to find the loopholes too.
Well, of course they do, but that's not the way to run a country.
It's not. Agreed.
You don't want them to spend their time with lawyers and accountants and deferred income specialists and favor grabbers and lobbyists.
God,
you want
yes.
them to spend their time building good products.
I know it's the worst part of my week is spending time with any of those individuals. So I hope they follow you. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
I have
We're going to follow you. I'm going to read your book. I'm going to send you my review.
I would love that. Please do.
There you go.
If you send me make a nice one, I'll put it on our website. I'll.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I know. It'll be a big deal.
Guys.
All right, Art. Thank you very much for your time. You are wonderful. Thank you.
If you hear him howling around your kitchen door,